Okay, this is a review video for Game Audio 1. Today, we're going to look at the implementation of character Foley and also how to make that door blueprint. We'll do it in the context of actually making a room, and I've already taken the liberty of using Quixel Bridge, which is all of the assets in Quixel Bridge, whether they're static meshes or materials or textures, things of that nature, are free if you are an Epic Games Unreal user. So the Bridge tab, if you don't see it where I have it docked, what you can do is you can go to Window and you can just look for the Quixel Bridge option, which is right here, and that will open it. If it opens in such a way that it's not docked, if it looks something like that, then all you have to do is just drag the tab to the top of the screen, and that way you can easily switch back and forth. Yeah, okay, it just glitched out there for a moment, but it's supposed to work like that. And you don't have to have this open necessarily. As it turns out, when you do download assets from Megascans, whatever they are, they'll end up in a Megascans folder. So I downloaded 3 materials, okay? And I can open any of these and just show you that they come with the material and the 3 texture maps that are used to make that material. But I made my own material using these assets, and we already have a review video for that, so you can review that if you need to. And I made a world-aligned material out of all of them. So, to get started, what I think I'm going to do is just delete out some of these meshes that I know I won't be needing for this lesson, because they are frankly irrelevant to what we're about to go over. So let me just make sure I get everything. You can also do this by selecting things in the world outliner. In this case, I'm going to click this first cube and shift click. Anything that begins with SM underscore, those are static meshes, and I can delete those as a group. This might be a faster way of doing it. So we'll get rid of all of those. Shift clicking, and oops, one of those was the floor and walls. Okay, so we're going to undo that. Let's see what's what here. Yeah, I guess I'll just proceed this way for now, and we'll fly in here and just make sure that I haven't missed anything else. The icon that you see here is called a player start. And the player start is basically used to determine where your character, your default character for that level, is going to spawn when you press play. So when I press play right now, you can see that the character, well, you will see in a moment, spawns in that location, right? And in this case, it's Quinn. But if I were to relocate that player start to some other location, let's put Quinn way back here, and she'll be facing that wall. When I press play, then the character spawns there, and of course I can turn around and run the other way if I need to, okay? Okay, so we're going to start by going back to the root directory of our content folder, and I would recommend to make sure that you're in the root directory of the content folder, right-click, and make a new folder. And we're going to call this character with a capital C, but no space, and capital F-O-O-T-S-T-E-P-S, character footsteps. Okay? I'm going to open that folder up, as well as my file browser, or my file explorer window. Because on the desktop, I downloaded that folder that I put on Canvas, and I unzipped it. So here I already had a folder with some footfall waves in it, but this is the one that we made together in class. And you can see that in there, we have our assets that we made. Now, since this is the folder that we made just for the footsteps, I'm going to take these 4 wave files and drop them in there, okay? Of course, they're not saved, and we know that because of the asterisks. Since they're all highlighted, I can Control S. Oops, I have to be in Unreal to do that. So let's highlight them all, Control S, and they will be saved. We are not going to use these directly. These are going to be inside of a sound cue. But before we make the sound cue, let's make another new folder in the root content directory. New folder, and I will call it Door. Oops, I didn't mean for that space to be there. Sounds. Underscores are always allowed. So if you feel like you could, if you need some sort of thing like that to make it more understandable, feel free to use an underscore to separate words. It does no harm, but usually just capitalizing both words, that's the main convention that most of us use. So we'll go back into Door Sounds, and I'm going to open up my File Explorer again. And these are two assets I guess we made, and I'm going to drag them into there. Once again, they haven't been saved, so we'll highlight them both and Control S. And I might as well hit Save All at this point because I've made changes to the level by deleting all those other static meshes. I don't want to delete these because these meshes are the walls and floor of the arena or playground that we're using. Now, I did take the liberty of making world-aligned textures, like I said before. So I'm going to go back to my Megascans folder and get into Surfaces. You can make these on your own. But I decided that I was going to make a world-aligned texture for the floor, so I could just drag it onto there. And if I open this up, you can see that I do have a scaler for the size. So I think that the tiling is a little bit more visible than I like. So let's pull this off just for a moment so that we can see these changes as we make them, okay? So let me find the size parameter and see what happens if I change that to 2, hit Apply. It's a little bit better. Let's see what happens if I change it to 3. See how we can watch that happen in real time, okay? So that's okay with me. I can leave it at that. So I'm going to close this material now, and I've got something like a decent wooden floor. I didn't really search the Quixel materials that deeply. I just needed something functional for our purposes. And this is great looking. And if you don't like this wooden floor, there's zillions more on Quixel Bridge that you're free to use. Now let's deal with the walls, and I made another world-aligned material for the walls that's brick. So I can either drag it right on there, or I can select the mesh itself and then just scroll down to see where the material is located. And it's just as good. Remember, okay, so I've got the wall selected that I want to apply to it, so I can just drag it there. And that's functionally equivalent to just placing it, okay? So let's just make all these walls out of brick for now. And notice that they're all the same size because it's world aligned. And let's increase the size just due to artistic preferences. So we'll drag that off and go to this tab so that we can see the changes as we make them. And let's see, maybe I would like the bricks to be size of 2. Okay, I think that works. So we will save. Technically, you should hit Apply first and then save. So I will close that out. And did I leave any of the walls unattended to? Apparently not. Okay, so let's start there. Go back to our root directory, and we will just see what it's like to be in this environment so far. Play. And, already, oops, sorry, there was a little lag there. It's probably due to the fact that I'm running a screen recorder at the same time that I'm running Unreal, so that's going to impact my performance a little bit, and I apologize about that. But already it feels like we're somewhere else, and I'm fine with that. Okay. All right. So the next thing I want to do is to implement our footstep sounds, and that relates to the animations. And we can find the animation blueprints in a couple of ways. The character blueprint is located in this folder. So if I open up third person and blueprints, you'll notice that there is this blueprint called BP third person. if I open that up and look at its contents, I can go to the viewport, and then what I can do is I can select the mesh component, and I can see what anim class it says. Under animation, the animation mode it's set to is use animation blueprint, and the anim class is ABP, which stands for animation blueprint _ Quinn _ C. Now I could search for that. I do know where it's located, by the way. Let me just put this tab over here. I do know where it's located because just from experience, it's here in characters under mannequins, animations, and it's right there. But let's say I didn't know where that was, and I just have this character blueprint open. With the mesh selected, if I want to find this blueprint, all I have to do is use the Browse to Asset button, and it will take me right there, okay? So these other folders contain the animations that are utilized within this blueprint, and that's where we have to place our animation notifies. Although Epic Games did provide notifies, I want to show you how to do this anyway by deleting the ones that are already there, because when we are working with other characters, you cannot take for granted that they're going to come with the notifies already placed for you. That was sort of a courtesy that was done by Epic Games. So let's get into Quinn here, and there is an idle, there is a run, there is a walk, and the jump animation might in fact be, well, you know, there's a couple of ways of looking at this, come to think of it, because if I open up the animation blueprint for Quinn, which is here, which is here, you'll notice that if I open that up, it says this is a child blueprint, okay? So it uses the logic and graph of another animation blueprint, but you can override blah, 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 blah. Okay, so really, most of the blueprint logic for that animation blueprint resides here under Manny, and you can see all of those animations here, okay? So what I think we'll do, therefore, just to play it safe, is we're going to go back to our character blueprint, and we're going to change out the mesh and the animation blueprint so that we're Manny instead of Quinn, and that will make this a lot more straightforward. So with the mesh component highlighted, we are going to change out the skeletal mesh asset right here and set it instead to SKM Manny. And you will notice the body change. And then the anim class is the anim blueprint that we want to use. And it's going to be ABP Manny. Okay, and you can see his pose changed a little bit. And if I hit compile and save right now, let that do its thing. And I get out of this tab, go back to the third person map. If I hit play, you'll see that the character is now Manny and not Quinn. It's lagging a little bit. Let's try it again. Come on. Yeah, okay, there we go. And again, that lag is just due to the fact of my screen recorder, but you can see now I'm Manny and not Quinn. So the thing about that is that, you know, you're going to be dealing with other characters soon, so I want you to learn how to do that and be comfortable doing it. All right, so I don't need that open anymore. But these are the animations that are used by Manny, and some of them are going to require notifies. So let's go to start with the walk forward. Double-click that, and that's going to open up this window. And if you hold down Control and use your center scroll wheel, you can zoom in and out on this, okay? And you can see that there are already notifies placed. To stop this from playing, by the way, that you just hit pause down here. And I'm going to delete all of the notifies. So I'm shift-clicking them right now to make a cumulative selection so that I can just delete them all in one shot. Now I'll use just my standard navigation tools so that I can get a good clear shot of the feet. I might slow my camera speed down. Oops, wrong button. Where's my camera speed? Scale snap. Maybe I can't get that from this window. It doesn't matter. It'll be fine anyway. So we're going to, while it's paused, we can scrub through this. And what I'm going to do is scrub forward until I see the first foot down. And I want to try to get this as accurate as I can. Now, hovering over, I think that could actually be improved a little bit. Hovering over the line that extends downward from the scrubber cursor, we do have one notify track. I could have more than one notify track if I need to, but right now we're only doing the footsteps. So right there where it says track 1 notifies, I'm going to align my mouse right with that line and right click. Now I get this contextual menu for the notifies, and I can say add notify, and I'm going to make a new one. And I'm going to call it footfall. I only have to really do this once because I'm going to reuse the same notify every time that there is a foot down, such as right there. Oops, I went too far. Let me just zoom in a little bit on the timeline. It'd be easier to scrub that way with greater accuracy. Now, this time, I'm going to do almost the same thing. I'm hovering over that line and right-clicking and add notify. But we already have made our footfall notify, so we're not going to make a new one. We're going to go to skeleton notifies, and right down here is where we're going to find the one that we created ourselves. And I will choose that, okay? And continue in this fashion until you reach the end of the animation for every foot down. So right there, skeleton notifies, there should be a foot down. And scrub forward to where it looks like it should be. Maybe that's a little bit late. Add notify, skeleton notifies. Oops, I missed it. Add notify. Click it just so it stays in place. Skeleton notifies footfall. And let me just zoom out on the timeline in case here's a scroll bar also. It looks like there might be a few more, so I don't want to miss any. Out there, add notify, skeleton notifies, footfall. I think it's fair to zoom in at this point. Right about there. Add notify, footfall. Come on. Footfall. And I hope that's the last one. Yeah, that's the end. So now we can save that animation, resave that animation sequence just by clicking the save button. I can now close that. Now let's go back to our animations, and we're going to do run forward. And once again, I'll zoom out, and I'm going to pause the animation. And I wonder if I can just draw a marquee. No, I can't. So I'm just going to have to shift select all of them and then press delete. Okay. Now again, we're going to maneuver the viewport so that we can see the feet. And zoom in a little bit. Scroll to the beginning of the animation. Get my cursor there. And we're going to find the first footfall. Right about there. Right click, add notify. Remember, we can reuse the notify we already made. So we'll continue doing that. Add notify, skeleton notifies. Oops. Sometimes it's hard to keep these menus open. Scroll over a little bit more. That way I don't have to zoom out. The scrubber is a little harder to control with precision when you're zoomed out, so If you just get used to using that scroll bar, I think that it's going to save you a little bit of misery. So we'll keep going until we get to the end here. That looks good to me. Footfall. Add notify. Skeleton notifies. Footfall. Scroll, not scrub, but scroll forward. Now scrub forward. And that's probably the last one. So that's probably close enough. Add notify. Footfall, and let me just double check. There don't appear to be any more, so I can save the animation and close it. Now let's go back to our content browser and see what else. I don't think that we have the right assets for that, the one that says walk in place. That's the one that when he walks up against something and he kind of just like can't get past the collision, so he walks in place. I think we would need other assets for that. And I didn't put anything in this level really to necessitate putting notifies in there. So for the landing of the animation, I think I would like to have just one of the footfall notifies in there to make a sound of feet. I guess it's really right about there. Just make doubly sure. Okay. This is when he lands from a jump. Add notify. Footfall. And yeah, there are no other foot downs after that, so I can save that. Close it. And maybe also for the jump. Okay, so we'll pause that. And I'm going to maneuver this way. Ordinarily, I would make a separate sound for the jump, but for now, just as a placeholder until we do, maybe, right around there. You can always go back and refine their placement if you need to, if it doesn't feel right in the game. But right now, I'm just going to use that as a placeholder, and we'll save that animation. Okay, now that we've done that, all the animations that are used inside of the animation blueprint have their notifies that require them. At least I think. Okay, I don't think that there are any others that we have to worry about. So we'll go back to mannequins, animations, and open up the animation blueprint for this character, ABP Manny. And it looks like I'm still simulating, so I got to press stop before I do any further coding. For now, don't worry about any of this stuff, okay? And what we're going to do is we are going to start by just right-clicking in the empty gray area and searching for our notify event, which will have the same name as what we called the notify. In this case, it was footfall. Okay, so we then get event, anim notify footfall. And this is where we're going to start off our logic, okay? So we need a reference to our character, so I'm going to pull off and type cast to BP underscore third, spelling counts, BP underscore third person character. And the way that I knew that that was what I had to cast to is because if I go to my third person map and back to the content directory, and look at the character blueprint for our character, that's exactly what it's called, BP underscore third person character. If your character had a different name, you would cast to that instead. Okay, so let's go back to the animation blueprint. Okay, now in the object pin, we have a node that really is mainly used inside of animation blueprints as opposed to other types of blueprints. And this is called an object wildcard pin. And we have to populate that very often with something. And sometimes it can be confusing to know exactly what belongs here if an event is not triggered by like an overlap or collision, which in this case it is not. The correct node to use here is called try get pawn owner. TRY get pawn. If you start typing it, it's context aware. So as soon as you see it, you can just select it. Try get pawn owner, and that's going to populate the object pin. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is something that I did not demonstrate in class, but is nevertheless good practice. After the cast, I'm getting an object reference to this third-person character, and I would like to store that reference in a variable in case I need to reuse it elsewhere in this blueprint. So what I'll do in this case, anytime there's a return value from a node that you might need elsewhere in a blueprint, a good practice to do is to right-click it and use this command promote to variable. And then this will happen, okay? And therefore, it goes into our variables list, and if I need it elsewhere, I can just get it by dragging it into the map, or into the graph editor, excuse me, and get the same information from this pin that I would have been able to get from this pin. It just makes things a little bit easier to do, especially when wires start crossing in ways that you don't want them to. And we call that spaghetti, when our blueprints have wires crossing over other wires and it becomes difficult for somebody else to interpret. So this will help us avoid that situation if we need that reference in the first place, because now we have set it as a variable, which we can get into our graph just by grabbing that variable, pulling it in, and using the get command. So again, when you pull this in, you can get it or set it. In this case, we would get it, and then we would have the same information available to us here as here. All right, but for now, we don't need that, so I'll just delete it from the graph. Now, in order to avoid spamming when we open the door, the next thing I'm going to do is a do once. So we'll do once. Okay, that's fine for now. We are ultimately going to come back to this reset. And after completed, we are going to create a timeline. So type timeline. Okay, so in case you're not clear, I right-click to get this list of possible functions. If it's something uncommon, occasionally you have to untick context sensitive, which will give you many more options. But in this case, I don't think so. We're going to do something called add timeline, or I can just type timeline. Maybe I do need to untick. Let's see, timeline. Where is my timeline? Do once. Let's see. Oh, no. That's for the, excuse me. I beg your pardon. I lost track of what I was doing. That matters for the door rotation. I forgot which blueprint I was teaching to you. So no, just this much is what you need so far, okay? And again, do allow it to, let me undo that, because I still want the variable set. So let me just option click or alt click the do once and just delete that node. We still want the variable set, so that's fine. And then the next thing to do is pull off of that and type play sound at location. Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot it was footsteps that we were doing there for a second. So now we're going to select the sound, which we haven't actually made yet. So for now, we'll compile and save, and we're going to just leave that tab there. Now, I'm going to go back to my content directory and find our character footstep sounds. And here's a shortcut, okay? What we can do is shift-click or command-click to make a cumulative selection and right-click any of them. And choose this, create single queue, not create multiple queues, but a single queue. And that will put all of those assets in there. I wouldn't rename it at this point. I would just press enter because this makes perfect sense to me. Now let's open up that sound queue. And look what it already has done for us. I mean, we didn't have to do anything. It put those in there, and it already has smartly anticipated what we're going to probably want. We want to randomize them, which is fine with me. And to add further randomness, it would be not a bad idea to have more than 4, but still we can randomize it further by placing a modulator in between the random output and the final output. So let's bring in a modulator and connect the output of the random into the modulator and the output of the modulator into our final result, okay? And now, if we want to vary the pitch or the volume, we can just set this to whatever range we want. Every time I hit play Q, it might be a little quiet right now. So let's go to the final output. I have my volume on my computer set pretty low also, so I don't get feedback. I'm not wearing headphones. Let's set the volume multiplier to 2 for now. Enter, and then save. So again, play Q. And that seems okay. So now that that sound cue has been made, we can go back to the ABP Mani, and if I have that sound cue highlighted, I can simply use the Use Selected Assets button, which is this arrow right here. That'll take whatever sound cue that I have highlighted, and it is still highlighted, that's proof, and it will pop it in there. Otherwise, you're going to have to search through this list. So I'll hit that Use Asset Browser Selection. Now it knows what cue to play, but it doesn't know what the location is. Fortunately, we can get that location either from the variable we made or right off this pin. So I'll pull off of here and type get actor location. And you want this one, the one that just says get actor location, okay? And plug in the return value, which by the way is a vector, because there are 3 values. And it really is what's called a struct or structure. In fact, if I right-click that button, I can split the struct pin, and it'll give me separate float values for the X, Y, and Z. But for now, we don't need that. So we'll right-click again and recombine it, because I need all of those 3 together. So that's going to go into the location pin there. Now I'll compile and save. And if I go back and try to play my game, and remember, there'll be a little lag here because of my screen recorder. So we'll press play. I'll wait for it for a second. Wait for it. Okay. So now, I hope you can hear that. When I jump, we have our footstep sounds, and they even sound appropriate, I think, for this floor. We recorded them ourselves and edited each one of them down so that they were what we call one-shot sound effects. So that worked out great, okay? Now the next thing I want to do is hit Save All, because I haven't done so recently and I don't want to lose any work. Leave all of those checked and then hit Save All. Go back to our content directory, and I might as well make the door sound cue first. So I'm going to open that up, and we are going to, this time I'll just make a sound cue. Or, you know what, because I don't want this to be randomized. Yeah, so I think I'm just going to make a sound cue. That's here under Audio, choose Sound Cue, and I'll just call it door sound _cue. Okay, that makes sense to me. All this other stuff doesn't even have to be open anymore, so I'll leave Bridge open in case I need another texture or mesh or something. And then I'll double click this to open it. I'm also going to grab the tab and dock it over here because I want it to be out of the way when I want to go right back to the map. But it's still there. Now I know I'm going to need these two WAV files, so I'll highlight them both and then drag them together and hover over that until I see it. Now I will drop them into that graph editor, okay? Now, the first thing I want is door open, right? And if I remember correctly, I think it was 2 seconds. We designed the sound, I think it was 2 seconds, 2.108 or something like that. So I'll play with it. I think that's what it was, okay? So actually, I think what I might do, in fact, is make 2 sound cues. So the door close will be separate. I'll just do the door open sound cue first. In fact, so it sounds a little different every time, I might as well put a modulator in between. Okay, that way every time the door opens and closes, it'll sound a tiny bit different, according to how I set the parameters of the modulator. Okay. So I'll set my volume multiplier to 1, or maybe even to 2. Remember, we left some headroom. And I'm going to save this sound cue, okay? And close it. Really, I should have called it door open. So I'm sorry about that. That wasn't meant to happen. And now I will choose door close, and I'll right-click that and create a cue. That's fine. I'm fine with the name. And I'll open it up. I might as well put a modulator there also. So we'll get a modulator, just so that it's not the same sounding every time. Okay. And select the final output, and I'll set that to 2 also. Okay. And save the cue. So we can play it. I think that might have been the doorknob, now that I think of it. Let me just compare. Door sound cue. Oh no, I think it's correct. You know what though? I think that when I play the door close, we were listening, of course, over big speakers, so we may not have noticed this. I'm listening to this on my computer speakers right now. But when I play this cue, I think it needs to be louder still. And lower in pitch. So let me reduce it by an octave. That's too much. We'll go 0.75. I'm happy with that, at least for now. And again, I'm only listening on computer speakers, so it remains to be seen how effective that is. Now we're going to make a new blueprint. So we're going to go back to our content directory and make a new folder. And I'm going to call this BP underscore, well, I'm going to call it door blueprint, because I'm going to use BP underscore door for the name of the blueprint. We'll open up that folder, and I'm going to make the blueprint asset right in here by right-clicking and clicking then on blueprint class. Here we see the most common blueprint classes. And if we need something more specialized, we can disclose this bottom portion. But for this door, we only need to be the most basic class, which is actor. Everything else descends from there or inherits from actor, plus extra features. But for this, we only need an actor, okay? And while it's still highlighted, I'm going to call it BP underscore door, like that. So we'll open that up. And we're going to now start working on our door. So to do so, select the default scene route, and we are going to add a component. The first component I want is a static mesh. Okay, so search for that and choose static mesh. And I'll rename this door mesh. Now, these you can have spaces for components, so you don't have to worry about connecting them together. So it's a static mesh, but it doesn't know which static mesh. So I'm going to choose the one from starter content, but you could choose a better looking door if you download one from the marketplace or from Quixel Bridge. We're just going to use something for from starter content. Here I can just use this drop-down menu and just do a search for door because I know that there's just one. So we'll say door, and there it is. Okay, got our door. Make sure that it is aligned correctly so that you can see with this legend down here that this is forward. This is the x-axis, okay? Yeah, now we need a collision volume around this to detect the overlap when the player walks to the door. So again, I don't want it to be a child of the door mesh. I want it to be a sibling. So I'll select again the default scene route and add a collision. COLL, that should be enough to give me a box collision, okay? And you can see it's not indented to the door mesh, okay? That way we know it's a sibling and not a child. We don't want the box collision to rotate with the door. We only want the door mesh to rotate, but for the collider to stay put. So I'll start by roughly centering this in the door. I'm going to also take my snapping interval and reduce the size of that, just to allow me to do a little bit more accurate placement. All right, now we need to scale this using the scaling tool. So I'm going to give my player a lot of latitude there so that it covers this whole area with plenty of room around it so that I don't have to be concerned that my character is going to have to like dodge or get out of the way when the door opens and the character's on the opposite side. That looks a little asymmetrical to me, so I'm just going to move it a little bit. It's also possible that I'm just not looking at it from the best possible angle. I just want to make sure that there's plenty of room to accommodate the door opening without the character being in the way. Okay. So for now, I'm going to compile and save this because it just occurred to me that this door, the static mesh, does not have collision. I forgot about that. So let's go back to starter content. Go to props and locate that door mesh right here, SM door. Open that up and we're going to go to collision and we're going to do add box simplified collision and save it. Okay, that way we won't be able to just walk right through the door. Okay, so I'm going to open that blueprint one more time. So content, door blueprint, BP underscore door. And we're back where we left off. You can see if I click the viewport, everything that we've done so far is still there. If I highlight the box collision, you can see that the wireframe becomes more visible. If I select the mesh, that gets a little outline too. All right, now we need to go to the event graph, okay? And it comes with some courtesy nodes, and I know that I'm not going to want to use any of these. So I'll highlight them and delete them. Next, I want to I want to simply select the box mesh, right-click it, and choose Add Event. The event that I want is Add On Component Begin Overlap, okay? Like that. So, from there, we're going to do a cast. So we are going to go cast to BP underscore third person character. I see it already. And again, if you were using a character that had a different name, you would just do that. Now, populating the object wildcard here is easy because if you're doing an overlap or collision based event, when you cast, you simply have to connect other actor to the object pin. And that confirms that the thing that overlaps is cast to the third person character just to make sure that that's the thing that's overlapping and not something else in the scene, okay? Since I get a return value here, like I did before in the animation blueprint, and we didn't do this in class, but it is good practice, is promote it to a variable and let it be set, okay? And now I've got that variable and I can always get it if I need it elsewhere in my code. And I don't at the moment, but it's conceivable that you will. So it's always a good idea to do that if you're getting a character reference. Okay? So now that I've got that reference, the next thing I want to do is I want to rotate the door mesh. So I'll drag that into the graph and pull off its data pin, and we're going to say set relative rotation. But I'm not going to connect the execution wire yet, because in between what we want is a timeline. So here is where I'm going to right click and choose add timeline. This is what I couldn't find before because it doesn't exist. It's not available in an animation blueprint, and I forgot what I was doing there temporarily. So I'll rename this door transition time, and spaces are, let me rename that. I misspelled. Door transition time. Okay. And you can get inside of here just by double clicking it. Now I want to add what's called a float track. So I click the plus button, add float track. And I'm going to type the length that I think I remember was 2.108, I think. And I think that rounded up to 211. Okay, so then I think my memory served me well. I need 2 keyframes. So one near the beginning, I'll right click and I'll add a key. Okay, and I'll round off the time to 0 so that it starts at the absolute leading edge of the timeline. And I'll leave the value at 0. Next, I'm going to right-click near the end and then left-click Add Key. And here I'll type the actual number 2.108. It seems to take that many decimal places, and that's exactly what I want. And the value is going to be the number of degrees ultimately that I want to rotate the door. So that'll be 120 degrees, I think, is a good value, but you can play with that according to your preferences. After you've done that and you've entered that value, you can click both of these buttons so that you can fit the entire curve into the viewable range of the window. This is a linear transfer right now, which means the door is always going to move at the same speed, but in this case, I like for an ease in and ease out. So you can click either keyframe and then shift click the other one. Okay, it doesn't matter which one is clicked first. And then right click either one of them and just click auto. And that will make an ease in and ease out curve for you. You can even adjust the tangent of it up here if you want to, and down here. But I don't want to. So I'm going to compile and save, but I don't want to close the blueprint. What I want to do is I want to close the timeline, which is in this tab, okay? So now, let me just get this out of the way. I can put this down here. And I think that in order to preempt the possibility of spamming this, I'll put my do once right here, okay? Do once. And then we'll connect completed to play. And then update will go to set relative rotation. And the target is going to be the door mesh because that's the thing that we're rotating. Now, I only want to rotate this on the z-axis, and a rotation is also a vector. To get access, to only the z-axis, I have to split this struct. So right-click on the pin, choose Split Struct Pin, and then you can see that I can rotate the yaw, and that in and of itself is compatible with this pin because they're both float values. You can see they're the same color, okay? So this is all the different data types are color coordinated. And maybe just to keep this blueprint neat and to avoid crossing wires, I'll put that right there, okay? That's always good practice. Try to make them as readable as possible. Okay, And okay, so that part I think is, the only other thing is to take the execution pin from set relative rotation and drag a wire back to the reset of the do once. Otherwise, we would only be able to open the door one time. And this resets the entire system so you can do it multiple times. Now, what about when we want the door to close? I'm going to get that box collision again by just clicking it, right click, add event. This time we want add on component end overlap. Okay? And what we want now to do is to connect the execution pin to the reverse of the timeline, like that. Okay? And that should control it pretty well. Compile and save. So now let's just test this by placing the door into the level. Okay? The blueprint, the entire blueprint. And now I'll go into play, and remember there's a lag because of my screen recorder, so be patient. Okay, so let's see what happens. And just make sure that it's opening and closing the way that we want it to. Okay, let's approach it from this side. No spamming. Can't walk through it, but it opens and closes behind us. How close to... Okay, I have plenty of clearance because the box collision was large enough. Okay, so that's a good sign. Now that we've got that blueprint, I don't have to have it in the scene necessarily yet because we're now going to build a little building. Okay, and that little building is going to have that door as a way in. Go back to content. And to make our lives easier, we're going to go back to starter content and then architecture, So let's start by, let's see, this symmetrical wall door 400 by 400, like that, okay? Maneuver so that we can see it, and we can rotate this so that you can put this wherever you want. I'm just going to put it there for now. And to make this even better, what we want is to go into props, and we want to get the door frame. Now I see here that this door frame has a different rotation than the space that's made for it. So let's put our rotation. Actually, our rotation snap is still at 10 degrees. So we'll use the rotation tool, and like you might expect, I'll just rotate that 90 degrees. And then I'm going to simply put it where it goes. And if it doesn't fit perfectly, that's okay. Let's reduce our snap size for placement and just get that just right. Okay, so let's get that in there a little bit more, a little bit to the right, and see how well it fits. Okay, now what I can see here is that when I center this, it's not exactly perfect, right? We can see light gaps. We don't want that. But this is fixable, okay? How is it fixable? With the scaling tool. So let's scale this so that it's a little wider. Okay, and let me just make sure that the bottom is not being cut off. No, it doesn't have a bottom. Okay, so that's okay. That looks pretty okay to me. And I want to make sure that it is well centered. See how it protrudes on that side, but I want the other half of it to kind of protrude by about the same amount on the other side, or just kind of fit into that space. I think I like that more. Okay? Now, what's going to occupy this void right here is actually the blueprint of the door that we made. And by the way, we can scale blueprints also. Okay, so let's go into our door blueprint and put that into the level. Clearly, we're going to have to rotate that 90 degrees also. So let's do so. And then we are going to rough place the door. Make sure that you get into the habit of looking at things from multiple angles just to make sure that they're fitting in the way you expect them to. Okay, and I can see now that that's the wrong size. Okay, so let's go back into scaling and make that about as wide as the door frame. Might need to kind of mess with it a little bit. Right now, I can always go back and readjust it, but right now I think that's going to be okay. Let's test that as it is. So I press play. Now let's see. I don't know which side I'm on. So I'm on the wrong side. Let's go in this way. I want it to open in, not out. Okay. So we walk through, and this could be a room. Okay. So far so good. Let's hit escape, and now we're going to complete this little building here. It doesn't have to be anything special. So we'll go back to our starter content, and we can find, under architecture, we can find this 400 by 400 wall. Just place it into the scene, and I'm going to want this to be, well, you know what it can be? No, I changed my mind. It'll be a small room. So let's rotate that 90 degrees like this. All right, and now we're going to place it in such a way that it is in alignment with the rest of the structure as a side wall. Okay, so let's just make sure that we're not overlapping more than we ought to. Maybe I'll make my snap size larger. Okay, that helped. And now I can scoot it in so that it fits perfectly. Now I need to make an opposite wall. A good way to do that is to hold down Option or Alt Shift or Option Shift and then drag. And you can see what that does is it makes a copy. So I can just put that on the other side. And I can do that again for the back wall. So Option Shift, bring it this way. And of course, if this is going to be the back wall, we're going to want to rotate it 90 degrees. And again, it's just a matter of lining it up. So we'll go back to our translation tool. Put that back there. And look at it from multiple angles. Try not to overlap. But just get it exactly right. Okay, you can see right there, it needs to be moved over just another notch. Okay. And let me just hit escape and see if there is any discrepancy that I'm noticing. Okay, there is a little bit, so I'm going to move this in. So that's pretty snug. Okay, so that should be enclosed now, so I'll hit play. And we'll enter our little building. Oh, I forgot to put a roof on there. We'll do that in 1 second. Now I'm inside. I can leave. Go back inside. Let the door close. Okay. Maybe it's a little too forgiving, the box collider on that one side. So let's go. It doesn't really matter. Here inside the building, well, let's put the roof on first, okay? So let's make another copy, Alt-Shift, of, let's say, that back wall, okay? And now we're going to rotate it just like you'd expect, 90 degrees this way. And we'll maneuver that into place with our translation tool. Oops, select. That ought to work. Inside of here, notice that it's dark, okay? So for the time being, just to give it some illumination, go to your Place Actors panel. Now, by the way, if you don't see that there, and it looks like this, the way that you get it to show up is to open the window menu and choose Place Actors, and that should show up in its default location there. So let's go inside the room where it's dark and just drag a point light into the room for now. There's different types of lights and there are different types of lighting techniques in Unreal Engine. And this will light the interior in various ways. So I'm just going to put this up here for now. Like it's like a light fixture on the ceiling or something. And I can really control every attribute of this light. Its color, its intensity, and a lot of other things. But for now, this will just provide us a little bit of illumination inside of this space. Try to center that. Okay, approximately. And we can also put objects in here. So if I go to starter content, you can use whatever static meshes you acquire, and there are plenty of good ones on Quixel Megascans and even in the Epic Marketplace. But starter content for prototyping is pretty convenient. So we're in there and we're going to look for props, and maybe what we want is a couch. So we'll put a couch in here. Now that couch looks pretty big, but we'll see. So let's rotate it 90 degrees. You know what? I don't want the couch. It's too big. So let's put the chair in here. That's got to compile shaders, so that's going to take a second. So it's going to have a little chair, maybe in the corner or whatever. So it's not the world's greatest looking chair. Believe me, there are much better chair meshes that you can get through Quixel or lots of other places. If I wanted to, I could even take this fixture, which is like a lamp. Oh, it looks, is it upside down? No, I don't think it's upside down. Just move my camera down here. Might be upside down. I have to see the bottom of it. No, that's right. So I'm going to move this up to the ceiling. And I'm going to put my point light, I think, right where that light bulb is, because that just seems to make logical sense. Okay, so we can drag that up to the ceiling. I don't want to go through the ceiling, and you can see when I've done so because the line sort of grays out. So right about there. And if I was being very fastidious, I might, you know, be a lot more careful about getting that centered. So let's move our point light to the location of the light bulb. So I'm going to reduce my snapping size, give me a little bit more granularity in my control. Go like that. Ooh, that was a mistake. And don't forget, it's usually helpful to look at this from multiple angles just to make sure that it is where you want it. Okay. What else could go in here? There's a light, there's a chair, starter content. Is there like a little table or something? Sure. There's this little table. Nothing especially wrong with that. And take this little statue, put it on the table. It's made of glass, so it's like semi-translucent. Rotate that a bit. It's not going to be terrifically visible. You can see how transparent that is. I'm going to go back just temporarily because this room is not very large. I'm going to go back to our door blueprint and just make it so that the box collision is not as close that I tighten it up on that side. So let's just, select it. And I'll make it more forgiving like this. So he'll have to get a little closer to the door so that when he goes to inspect the table and the chair and whatnot, it doesn't cause the door to open. All right, so now let's hit play. Wait for it. And there's our little building. Excuse me, that's a hard drive. Yeah, it's staying open because the collider is just too tight on that one side. So EP door, report box. Might take a little bit of experimentation. Close. Okay. So here's my solution to this problem right now. I think the room is just too small. So why don't we do this? We're going to take this wall. Let me use my selection tool. We're going to take this wall, and I'm going to shift click to make a multi-selection. We're going to take this wall. Okay, I'm going to continue to move to this side and shift click this wall. I'm going to go up above, and I'm going to shift-click the roof. Now I'm going to Alt-Shift and elongate the room. While I do that, I also need to delete that surface right there, okay? So if I don't want to have to repeat myself, by the way, with that, let me just shift click everything again, and I'll show you a nifty little handy tool that you can use. So let me shift click all of that stuff. And with them all selected, I'll right click any of those cumulatively selected meshes and choose group. Now I can move the whole thing as one object, okay? And you can always ungroup things after you've grouped them. So let's make our snapping size larger again. And just, now we have a larger room. Go in there, and the table and chair and everything can be farther away, so that our character doesn't have to worry about having that door always being open. Let's hit save all, because I haven't done that in a while. You see, all these things have been modified. So we'll save all. And let's back out of here. And now I might want to go back to my door blueprint and set that collider back to the way it used to be. Okay, so we're going to go to the box and recenter it. That'll give them more leeway. Okay, so now we've compiled and we've saved, and now we should have the door closed behind us. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm in here, and you can see that the light source is coming from where it ought to be coming from. It's coming from that lamp, because that's where I placed the point light. If I want out of here, then I can get out of here. Okay, we'll do the sound in just a second, but what would be easier to do first is to just change the materials that I used to make this building. So let's go back to Content and Megascans, Surfaces, and I've got this world align material that I can just drag. Looks like something I might need to fix there. Actually, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm not going to fuss over a perfect alignment right now. It's really not the point anyway. But just to make it look like it's made out of something. And that works for me. I'll do the roof. The roof doesn't look right to me for some reason. It's a group actor. All right, not going to worry about that. They're not going to see the roof anyway. Be a separate problem to solve. Oh boy, this whole thing looks like it's elevated off the ground now. Okay, so let's fix that. Okay. It's good enough for now. And by the way, those bricks look a little bit big to me, so I'm going to go to that world align material and look at the size parameter that I made. And I think that can be maybe 1.25. So enter, apply, and save. I think I like that much more. Let's see how that feels. We could put more than one light in here if we wanted to. Okay, so the system works, and in order to complete this illusion, we now have to add the audio to the door. So let's go back to our door blueprint. And the way that I'm going to do this is right before the do once, at least for the door opening sound. So I'm going to pull these nodes over. And from here, after I set the variable, I'm going to make what's called a sequence, like that. So what that's going to do is allow me to do my original execution flow and also something else, like almost like two things in parallel. I'm just straightening out my wires right now. So it's still going to do what it did before, but also I'm going to do play sound at location right there. The asset that I'm going to use is the cue that I made. And we're going to go back to content and door sounds, and door sound cue is the opening. And I'll pop that in there. Now I need the actor location. I can get it from right here or from the variable that I made. Get actor location. Put that into the location pin, right? Compile and save. I also need a sound for the door closing, but I also have to wait until the door transition time has elapsed. And to remind myself, I think it's 2.108, so I don't have to remind myself. So what we'll do here is we can pull off of this, and we'll do another sequence. So it still does what it was doing before, but also on then one, play sound at location. Now this time the sound that I want to use is the door close. So I'll select that, pop it in there. And the location is the same location. I already have that. I could even have made a variable out of that by promoting it, but I'm just going to go like that. If I don't like the wires crossing, I can double click on the wire and make what's called a reroute node, which I can drag around just so that it's easier to read. And you can, by the way, have as many as you need. Oops. Sometimes it helps to draw a box around it. You want the icon to look like that. All right. As long as it's readable, it's good. I'm going to move out a little bit. And another common thing to do is to do what's called commenting out your code so that when somebody looks at this, they know what this system is. So to do that, you draw a big marquee around all of the nodes to select them, and then you hit the letter C. Now what that does is it creates that box and allows you to name it, and I'm going to rename it Door Logic. Okay? You can name it whatever you want, but give it a name that would make sense to another person looking at it. At this point, I think it should completely work. So let's verify that. I don't know if the volume's going to be right, but we'll find out. Oh. So, yeah, I did forget a couple of things, okay? So what I forgot to do is I forgot to put a delay node here because I have to allow for the time that has elapsed. I'm going to have to redo all these reroutes. That's okay. Worst things could happen. And, yeah, that's just done. Okay, let's get rid of that. And still need the same location. And our delay before we play that sound actually should be, there should be two play sound at locations. One should be right here with no delay. Play sound at location. That's for the squeaky door again. Okay, we want that to happen as the door is transitioning, as it's reversing direction. And then 2.108 seconds later, we want the door close sound. So what was the door open sound? It was that cue. And we're going to pop that in here. And we're going to use the same location that we used before. You can straighten these out with reroute nodes if you want to make your blueprint look better. I would recommend that you do that. I'm not going to waste time right now. I'm just going to make sure that our system completely works. Yeah, I made it too wide, the collision box. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so let's have a look one more time at the entire blueprint for the door and remember what we've got. Okay, so the logic started using the box collision on component begin overlap. And this event gives us the other actor for our object pin on the cast. So we cast to the third person character, which is our default character, promoted that to a variable, okay? I then did a sequence so that I could play the sound starting at the moment that the door starts opening. I did a do once following that to prevent it from spamming. This then fed the timeline, which we looked inside of, and we made a nice curve that went from a time 0 and a value of 0 to the time of 2 whatever we entered, 2.108. And then we made it an ease in and ease out curve, which is optional. That's up to you. So let's close the timeline. What do we want to rotate? We want to rotate the door mesh, so I dragged that into the graph, and that became the target for this set relative rotation node. So that and I had to split the struct pin to gain access to only the yaw, only the z-axis. Okay, remember, normally this is all wrapped up into one struct, but you can always split a struct. And each axis of that vector is unto itself a float, and that's why we made a float track in the door transition time. Then took the output execution pin of the set relative rotation, put that back into the reset of the do once so that I can do it more than once. But prior to that, I also did a sequence, and therefore it's playing the sound as it's transitioning and opening, okay? So I wouldn't want to put it anywhere else because I need it to begin as soon as the door starts moving. And I got the actor's location from this return value, but, you know, on the same token, because I promoted it to a variable right here after I got the reference, I could just as easily have gone and gotten that variable, pulled off of here, and type get actor location, because this is a full object reference. This is because we promoted it to a variable as soon as we got it, okay, and set the variable there. So this is just as good, and we could have used that instead for get actor location. But since I already had it in the blueprint, remember it can feed multiple nodes, as I've triple dipped on it here, you can see. Okay, now I selected the box again, and I chose by right-clicking, add event, and the one that I chose was on component end overlap. I did a sequence, and the then one of the sequence went to the reverse, I beg your pardon, of the door transition time. We could have made a separate sound for the door closing, but, you know, we just had a shortage of time. And no need to recast at this point, because I wanted the sound to play again immediately. But before the sound of the door closing, I had to add a delay that was equivalent to the duration of the timeline before the slamming sound of the door. Otherwise, it would have just happened at the wrong time. I have to let the timeline elapse before that sound played. And that's what that delay was for. Okay? So the blueprint is all here. And I think I've let you see it enough times to understand it. And we commented it out so that somebody else could know what it means. So we'll compile and save one last time. And you know what else I'll do is I will go into starter content just to put one finishing touch on this. And I'll use just the default music. So let's go into audio, and there is a music cue, a starter music cue that comes here. Let's open that for a second and look at the wave player. Make sure it's set to looping, and it is, so that's fine. So all I've got to do is drag that. This is a 2D sound. This is not spatialized, and it's just going to be stereo music playing as a background. So now we're playing the game. There's music. There's footsteps. Maybe the music is a little loud, so we can search for it here. Starter. Oh, I've got a filter set. So starter music cue. And what we can do is we can even attenuate it in the details panel. So I'll do 0.75 like that. Play. It's a little quieter now. And again, the lag is just due to my screen recorder, so forgive that, please. So now he's alive. Good sounding footsteps. Door opens. Closes behind me. Makes the shutting sound when it's supposed to. I've got some props in here. I could make the floor out of another basic mesh and give it a different material like carpet if I wanted to, or some other material. And I can leave. Okay, so... Oops. Hold on a second. I right-clicked when I shouldn't have, so let me restart this. It's very satisfying when all these things work in harmony. Okay? So even though I didn't make the most incredible looking building, I just kind of threw it together, I still, even as simple as this is, I get a little bit of a thrill just watching the magic happen and knowing that it just started out as something in my imagination and in our imagination, and yet it works exactly like we expect it to. If I don't want to start from back in this corner, of course, I could just get my player start and use the translation tool and put that wherever I want it. Also, there's an arrow component here that will help you. You can see, if I get close enough to this, you can see this is the arrow component. So our character would be facing that wall right now. So I can rotate the player start so that it's got at least a view of that building. And if I play one more time, you can see that the building will be within my field of view as soon as I spawn in the level. It clipped with my character there. I got a little too close to the door. There we go. Alright, now, we added collision, so I still can't walk through the door until it's open. And when I try to leave, remember, it'll block me because it's got collision. So I think actually right now I might even be stuck. So I'd have to hit escape and get out of there that way. Anyway, I hope that review was helpful for you, and if you follow these steps exactly, you should get identical results. I will upload this right now. That'll take a little while, and post a link on Canvas for you, and I'll put that in the announcements section. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye.